You probably have heard of this African proverb too. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's a powerful reminder about the importance of community. We're all who we are today because of the people and experiences around us. And community leaders play a vital role in facilitating those safe rooms, experiences, and journeys. The result? It's not just professional growth, but also personal growth as we find a sense of belonging. It's the feeling that in this community, you can be yourself, you can dream new possibilities, and you can grow with other innovators. But how are these communities first built? And how do community builders become community builders? Ever wonder about it? While we hear their inspirational messages of what their communities and work means, what also goes on behind the scenes? Why are certain leaders more impactful and influential than others? And does that really matter at all? Hi, welcome to Curious Monica. I'm your host, Monica Kang, the founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox. And today, I'm excited to learn all about community builders with you.
Wait, all this time at work, all these older people told me I don't have leadership ability. I'm serious that I was told I don't have leadership ability. And I should just keep my head down, stay an engineer. Because when they asked me what I want to do in my career, I said I want to be a software engineering manager. But then they kept saying I'm not vocal enough, I don't speak up enough, I'm not a leader. And that started to piss me off over 2-3 years at that company, to the point where I want to prove them wrong.
I've never had a chance to meet these different versions of myself and watch myself transform at the same time. So that feels like an opportunity for people who are builders, because it seems like a coming into oneself that we're never going to get a chance to do again, because we're out in the world doing the work. We're building the communities, right? So for me, that's exciting.
In education, we oftentimes think that there's this one strategy or one thing that all kids need. It doesn't work like that. Kids are all different, unique individuals, and they need to have education that's tailored to them. They need to have experiences that they enjoy, that they can find their passion, and that they can find their journey.
Everyone has a platform and everyone has a voice. Even if you share it and one person shares it, maybe that one person is influential and they can share it with their network, right? And I think that the most important thing about raising awareness is not just about raising awareness. It's about making it so that it gets to the institutional level, making it so that we're getting more airtime. I think a lot of people understand that we're not getting the airtime that we deserve, and only the Asian news outlets are reporting on these hate crimes, right? And we want to make sure that non-Asian major news outlets are also reporting on these hate crimes so that we're actually trending towards change.
Welcome to Curious Monica, where we study how different people thrive at different jobs. Today, I'm eager to dive deeper into the role of community builders. What is the role? How do you become one? And why do they love what they do? Let's start with where we are. Like you, I love communities, both building them and being a part of them. As someone who has lived in different cities, worked in different industries, and loves to learn, I'm always hungry to find new networks and communities where I could feel challenged, encouraged, and feel at home. This is why I'm extra excited to meet other community builders, particularly those who really go the extra mile to build communities with care. From how someone shows up to an event, to how they would feel being a part of a network, community builders' role and work never really stops. This is why often many community builders tend to have a strong reason for wanting to become one. The number one reason for wanting to build a community? Because there wasn't a community already that they felt like could represent their voices and ideas.
I think because we knew that there was a problem that we wanted to tackle, right? And so when we were going to all of these meetups, we saw that there were always a panel of speakers and none of them were of Asian descent. And that really is the impetus of why we started Asian Hustle Network. And we knew that Asians are often underrepresented in many, many different industries. So to put it shortly and bluntly, I had no idea that, I was going to do anything related to just representing Asians in a more just light. But I've been so grateful for this experience. I think this has really opened my eyes to a lot of different areas where I can be of service and give back to the community.
So I ended up forming my own community in the Bay Area, just for real estate investors, that grew up to about 2,000 members in 2 years, which is pretty awesome. But on top of that, it really taught me like how to cultivate a community, because to me, if I could bring together people of different age, background, ethnicity, profession, industry, to trust each other with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, what if I bring it to the Asian diaspora?
Meet Maggie Choi and Brian Pham, co-founders of Asian Hustle Network. They founded the community in November 2019 because they saw a clear gap. Why aren't we celebrating Asian entrepreneurial stories further and more regularly? Both understood that in Asian culture, humility and diligence was valued more than speaking up about one's success. And they wanted to create a space for all generations to feel appreciated and empowered to celebrate their voices as Asian entrepreneurs. The idea came from personal experience. They knew how it felt like working in industries they loved, but also as one of the few Asians in every room they walked into. Why does it have to be this way? What if there was a way they could bring all Asian entrepreneurs to connect, collaborate, and be empowered? It was a dream and a gap that they knew was lacking and something they wanted to change. And to first understand how to fill that gap, they had to reflect and dig deep on why they cared to build this. Brian shares more.
I guess a lot of people forget that I used to be a software engineer. So I worked as a software engineer for almost 10 years. And the word hustle kept coming up as I'm working my job, because a lot of my friends had quote unquote side hustles. And my side hustle was real estate, where other people were in stocks or investing or whatever. I focused on creating a dual income because I was a firm believer in having passive income. And I felt like that was the only way to free myself from corporate. So I got into real estate about 5 years ago, and it was completely new to me, because unlike tech, where I can literally work my work and not talk to anyone at work, I had to build relationships. I had to learn about people's stories. And on top of that, I realized in real estate that the best way to get into like the really big deals is by networking and building relationships. So I ended up forming my own community in the Bay Area, just for real estate investors, that grew up to about 2,000 members in 2 years, which is pretty awesome. But on top of that, it really taught me like how to cultivate a community, because to me, if I could bring together people of different age, background, ethnicity, profession, industry, to trust each other with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, what if I bring it to the Asian diaspora? And the whole Asian diaspora thing has always been on my mind since I was in tech. Like every company that I worked for was heavily dominated by a very white C-suite, essentially. And, I had situations at work where I felt like I was invisible. I felt like I didn't have a voice. I felt like I never got promoted, and it's very frustrating for me. And being coined a leader in the real estate community was something that I wasn't used to, that I slowly embraced, that also gave me the courage to like look inside out, right? So I was looking at myself and seeing what I'm capable of doing. And the sense of curiosity was like, wait, all this time at work, like all these older people told me I don't have leadership ability. I'm serious that I was told I don't have leadership ability. And I should just keep my head down, stay an engineer. Because when they asked me what I want to do in my career, I said I want to be a software engineering manager. But then they kept saying I'm not vocal enough, I don't speak up enough, I'm not a leader. And that started to piss me off over like 2-3 years at that company, to the point where I wanted to prove them wrong. But at the same time, I needed a purpose. I wanted to combine what I learned from all 3 aspects of my life. Like the technical side, regardless of what you do, will always be there. Like creating websites, creating mobile apps. I'm grateful for that experience, but at the same time, it's like now I have a chance to build something that I always wanted to do. And going from my background, I spent a very unhealthy amount of time watching CNN's Great Big Story, Humans in New York, and all these other story platforms, that I wanted to bring that vision into what I'm doing. And when I met Maggie, I told her about my idea. I told her this probably about a year before we created Asian Hustle Network. But I was constantly confused because I didn't know how to execute. I had this idea that I wanted to do this for the community, and I had an idea where I wanted to bring all these elements together, but I didn't know what kind of platform. And at the time, like Subtle Asian Traits came out, and it started hitting a lot of momentum where I'm like, we had to be a Facebook group first. And it's been a year where we've grown into Clubhouse, we're into LinkedIn. All in all, I think we have close to 100,000 members right now in our community across the world. This is only year one, and within year two, we can hit 1 million members around the world.
Fast forward, despite the pandemic, AHN grew to become one of the most vocal and vital Asian entrepreneurial networks in America and around the world. Today, its Facebook group has over 76,000 members actively contributing and engaging in monthly virtual community building programs. And as Brian shares, if you include members across all platforms, they have over 1 million members they oversee every day. Not only has the hunger for topics both Brian and Maggie wanted to address garnered interest, but also issue-based topics like Asian hate crimes and discriminations during the pandemic. The two have used AHN as a platform to speak up and amplify Asian innovators' stories and voices on matters as such, and have been a regular speaker and advocate for all Asian entrepreneurs and hustlers. Okay, so that's what we see outside. How much work and thought must be going on the inside to build and lead this every day? Brian and Maggie listen to lead and advocate for so many people. I was curious, how do you make sense of time as a community builder? I've noticed in particular the amount of care they put into their work and how timely they have been to speak up about key movements like Black Lives Matter and Asian hate crimes. This was particularly noteworthy considering many organizations and communities hesitated on how and when to speak up, as things were getting messy during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a really great question. To your first question about how do we make time for it, that is a really great question. I feel like we barely have time, but
we're drowning every day.
just like many entrepreneurs, I think we always ask ourselves, like, what do we have time for? What do we have time for?
I know.
And we just have to make time for it. It's not a question of whether or not we do have time. We just have to make time for it. And I think right now is just such an important time for Asians to really look into our cultural heritage and look into what's happening right now. Because at the beginning of Asian Hustle Network, honestly, like before COVID had happened, we were obviously a organization for Asian entrepreneurs and professionals, right? And we did get some comments saying like, I understand you guys are more on the entrepreneurial and professional level, but you guys will have to be political at some point. We really took that feedback because, yes, we do have the word Asian in our name, right? So at the end of the day, anything that happens to the Asian community is going to look at us and see what we're doing because we do represent the Asian community, right? We want to speak to the Asian community and we want to be able to reach out to them and say like, hey, look, like we're here for you and we need to band together and see what we can do as a community to move forward. And so I would say regarding your second question about when to step forward and when to step out. Honestly, like there are corporations and organizations who have been afraid to say something, right? They don't know what type of backlash they're going to get. But we have always felt that it is best to say something rather than to not. And regarding your sentiment about like, you feel like we step in at the most perfect moment, we're like always kept up with news and like current events and everything like that. We try to reach out to the community as fast as possible, as soon as possible, right? Because there are organizations that I think they look at other organizations and they see like, oh, maybe we should say something now, right? But at that time, it's too late already. And we often feel like, okay, we need to get on this as soon as possible, right? Because people are looking to us for direction on what to do. So if we can't be that guiding light, then, it's very hard for them to look at us as community leaders.
Yeah, to build off how we identify trends, we have our eyes and ears in the ground really closely. So we can see current issues that are happening real time. Like we keep up with the news, we keep up with all the posts. We know something's wrong as soon as like you check the pending posts, like 50 of them. What's going on? Yes. So I think the community does a great job of keeping us as leaders informed and just understanding that there is a message when there is a common theme among these different posts, concerns, comments, messages, of course, DMs. We read all of them. lately we've been dying under them, but we still read over them. But it's like, oh, there's so many issues going on. But to kind of elaborate more on, identifying different platforms, right? Like Clubhouse and whatnot. I think what we were really inspired by, it's listening to like Guy Raz, How I Built This, or, Gary Vee. And we have a huge early adopter mindset. Like we will come into a platform first, almost like a calculated investment, see how the momentum plays out. Because we know as soon as other people try to get onto it, it's too late. I think Clubhouse is a classic example of that, right? We got on really, really early, and now we established ourselves almost like the first Asian club on Clubhouse, just to like gather all the momentum. With that being said, too, when I hopped in Clubhouse at the very beginning, I felt lost. I didn't like it. I felt like there's no one here that kind of spoke topics that I wanted to hear about, and I felt like there was no place where other Asians around the world felt like they can turn to that makes the application fun. But at the same time, looking at the user statistics of Clubhouse, I think at that time it was like less than 1 million, right? Now it's like 8 million or something like that. It's crazy. I noticed that this is going to hit the Asian community pretty soon, and I want to position the Asian Hustle Network to be in front of the wave. And now we are. We hit 30,000 members in 2 weeks, and hopefully we're going to project to hit 1 million. And the same goal applies to our Facebook group. We want to build that safe place for people to share stories, connect with each other, understand each other, because ultimately we're stronger as one. We're stronger as one community. We're stronger as one, almost like one umbrella, in order to force changes that are positive for our future generations.
Yeah, I think one other important thing to know as well is that your community members or anyone in your audience, they can tell whether or not you are doing something for good social impact because other people are doing it, or because you truly do have a passion and a purpose for it, right? And your audience can really tell. And I think that, essentially any social media post is considered performative action. And I think that one common misconception for Asian Hustle Network is, people ask us like, what are we doing to really move the needle and make changes for a good social impact? And I think a lot of people don't know that, Brian is the co-founder of Hate is a Virus, which is a movement to combat xenophobia and racism against Asian Americans. So essentially, like Asian Hustle Network, we personally do feel like we have that responsibility to, help the community and move the needle to make changes. And so that's really what our origin stands for, right? We're not doing it because, we see other people and other organizations are doing it, but because we have that responsibility and we have that fire and that drive to make good social impact.
Yes, lots of great nuggets here. First, to serve your community well, you have to listen and always take proactive steps. Second, you can't be what you don't invest in. They are successfully able to build the network and impact because they're putting in the work and dedication. Third, stay true to who you are as an organization. To speak up, you have to first have clarity in who you are and what you and your organization stands for. And last but not the least, be patient. As Maggie and Brian say, they understand how taking action is key, but there is a clear difference between being reactive versus proactive. To be proactive, you have to spend more time reading, listening, digesting, and really wanting to understand what your people desire to hear. It's so much more than just listening to respond. It's listening to understand. As you can imagine, the skill requires training and practice. This is why Darren Slack is dedicated to spending his work empowering youth on building these skills early in their life: empathy, compassion, and a love for community development.
And you have to share with me. Say it one more time. What's on the shirt?
Shirt says, "Believe there is good in Indianapolis." And then the highlighted part is "Be the good." So it's not enough to believe that there is good, but we each have to embody the good and be the good.
Meet Darren Slack, founder and CEO of ProAct Indy. In November 2010, he founded his nonprofit to give youth ages 10 to 18 and professionals a chance to connect and serve communities in need in Indianapolis. His vision was that if youth could learn about the importance of community building early in their lives, they would be able to live with more empathy, understanding, and compassion. And so will the professionals working with them. Why? Because it's a key skill, and it's a skill that takes time to hone. In 10 years, he has become the leading organization in transforming how youth and professionals learn community building. But to find this perfect mesh, he shares how he had to start by remembering how empowering youth requires humility and attention to detail. The detail of remembering that everyone is unique and wants to have different ways of learning and growing. What are things you wish other adults understood about youth empowerment and youth community building education?
The simple way of saying this on a high level is that our youth don't care how much we know. They just want to know how much we care. In education, we oftentimes think that there's this one strategy or one thing that all kids need. It doesn't work like that. Kids are all different, unique individuals, and they need to have education that's tailored to them. They need to have experiences that they enjoy, that they can find their passion, and that they can find their journey. And they can develop the skills that are unique to them, that they want to develop and hone in on. Not every kid is cut out for college. Not every child is cut out for the workforce. Right? I mean, we want to encourage our kids to either to be enlisted, to be enrolled, or to be employed. Right? So those three pathways, what we want our kids to discover for themselves. So for us adults, as us trailblazers, as us innovators, we have to give diverse experiences for our kids so that they can understand who they are first. And we have to make it equitable sphere for our kids to thrive. Education is not equitable right now. We have not every kid tests the same or learns the same. And we put all these responsibilities on parents and youth, and we really discount that our youth and our students, they're people, just like any of us.
Well said. And I'd say what Darren shares goes for all community leaders, no matter who you serve. Your people don't care how much you know. They care about how much you care. And the way we often serve right now is not equitable. Not everyone is going to like that one program format or one solution. How do you make your offerings and services more equitable and accessible? Keeping in mind that your audiences are all different human beings with different needs and interests.
For us adults who have made it, quote, end quote, it's important for us to seek first to understand before we are understood. And so if we can take time to build relationships with our youth, to really engage with them, to trust them a bit with things that you think that they can't do, then we'd be surprised at what our kids can do to really help solidify the future of our world.
Indeed. If we aren't trusting who we serve, how will we give them the space to grow? So Darren, how do you then hone your craft as a leader? In addition to time management and prioritization, what are other things you do to hone your community building skills?
But I found that most success is being upfront with my wife and my kids about when I need alone time even. And I'm better about communicating that now because I'm more confident in what I need and more understanding what I need to be living and optimizing and working at my full self and operating at my full self. And I need alone time. I'm an introvert by nature, but I'm in the extroverted role. So you can imagine I get drained by the end of the day. Drained. And so those moments I alluded to earlier is when you need intentional times with your kids and with your family. We have to take pride in self-care too, as well. I mean, even if it means like just 10 minutes or 5 minutes or just sitting out in the car a little bit longer. I mean, those things really, if you master your craft, you need time set aside to master it. You have to block off your calendar. Like for me, my bookend days, like Monday mornings from 8 to 12, no one's allowed in that time. That's Darren's time. Fridays from 1 to 5, that's Darren's time, right? That's admin time. It's time to really either read a book, time to just finish up some emails at the end of the week or at the beginning of the week. That's time to get the next grant done or do some research. I mean, those are protected times where you start to master your craft, where you can really hone in on oh, well, I might not be good at the accounting side of what we do, or the bookkeeping. Okay, so let me spend an hour here on my book-in time, my admin time, right? So just be intentional with our time, and answer your question, just be cognizant of balancing that time when you need to disconnect, when you need to hone in on your hobbies, your passions, your family, right? To balance that with that professional time that you build into your schedule, to where you can learn and really go deep to work on the business or on the idea, and not so much in it.
Prioritize your time, energy, and care. This goes to everyone, not just for introverts. If we are always giving, delivering, and working, we don't have time to recharge or find new ways we could serve others better. I agree with Darren in that a simple way you can start is by blocking off a consistent time in your day to dedicate to alone time. Without it, we may easily let our day pass by. I started blocking off my Mondays as no meeting days, for instance, so that I could do deep end work, set my intentions for the week, or reduce meeting hours on certain days. All of these steps permit me to go deep and work on the community. If we are so busy only thinking about what we deliver day to day, we miss out on seeing the forest, as Darren said. Okay, but what if your community is online? As Maggie and Brian shared earlier, you could easily then spend hours reading messages across all your platforms. Avni Parikh understands your feelings and is here to help you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Avni Parikh. I am an empathy hacker and a great believer in tech changing the world for good and the transformative nature of communities. And I'm just so happy to be here.
Avni is one of the most thoughtful and caring community builders you'll meet. She makes everyone feel welcome, understood, and appreciated in every room she walks into. It's easy to see how she enjoys her work of bridging worlds together. While she helps community builders grow their communities online as the program manager for a community partnership at Facebook today, she has 14 plus years of experience building communities and social enterprises in India, Kenya, and the United States. So bridging rooms across different industries online is really her forte. In other words, she is a good person to ask this question I was wondering about. How can community leaders use tech platforms to really grow and deepen connection with their members? Is scale really the only way to grow? How can you go deeper?
Yeah, and thank you for allowing me to take a breath before I answer that question. I really struggle, and I'm only going to speak for myself, with this idea of scale. So I'm a very soul-led person. I make decisions by what my heart says. Yes, there's a logical brain and all that kind of stuff. But for me, the distance between heart and head is really far. But it's not going from here to here. It's going from here to here. So when I hear something and there's like a spark inside of me, if it doesn't get satisfied, I am relentlessly pursuing and searching for the answer to it, or how to solve that, or how to answer that cry. I have always felt a struggle between scale and intimacy and depth and connection. Tech, it can create that in moments, but I think that's the struggle. And I think maybe all tech doesn't do that well. And what I see is, because I sort of am in like the community industry, is that people are searching for intimacy. They're searching for smaller groups of people where they can really feel like they're seen and heard, versus being a part of like a really large conversation. I think when that's imbalanced is when movements start, and there's struggle and there's rebellion. So that's where I think tech right now is struggling. Like to work for work in a place that maybe doesn't even have like a human customer service. And then to realize psychologically how that makes people feel. At the end of the day, if people aren't being validated, if they don't feel like their voice is important or their concerns are important, you're missing out on something, and eventually people will be frustrated with you. So that's where I think there's room for improvement.
I love Avni's reminder. At the end of the day, this is not a numbers game. This is about care and quality. And while tech platforms are places we could use to connect and be reminded of this, It's up to the leaders and organizations to take the initiative to design an experience where people feel heard, understood, and valued for who they are. Relying on tech to solve that is short-sighted. Why are people in your network wanting to connect with you and your community? It made me even more curious. What are you worried and excited about regarding where community development is going, Avni? There are so many networks and membership platforms to join, and at times it could be exhausting, yet still make us feel isolated. What do we do? How can leaders do a better job?
I am excited about silence. This is not the answer you might have been expecting, but I think that this moment in history has forced us to reckon with ourselves in a way we've never had to before. Monica, you and I are wired in a very interesting way, in a very similar way. Like, we have thrived and craved to build spaces to convene people. I think this is giving us an opportunity to do the opposite, and I actually think it's welcome. And one of the things that struck me is that I've never had a chance to meet these different versions of myself and watch myself transform at the same time. So that feels like an opportunity for people who are builders, because it seems like a coming into oneself that we're never going to get a chance to do again, because we're out in the world doing the work. We're building the communities, right? So for me, that's exciting. It's also simultaneously worrying because it can be addictive. So speaking as somebody who has kind of pulled away from a lot of things in the last year, intentionally to do my own deep work, I don't know if I want to show up in the world in the same way to build and scale and convene. There's something that's so attractive about just spending time with myself and understanding my own voice and meeting these different versions of myself. And so I think that's where this is like a two-sided coin, in that we may be in for a deep inward shift if there are more people that are like me, who have been front and center trumpeting and leading communities, who have now decided to pull into themselves. It could be an opportunity for more people to rise up and to become those conveners, because, there's a next generation, like we need to usher in the next movement builders. But I think it's very interesting to also think about this as a global spiritual shift. Could be good.
More time for deep work. Yes, I appreciated Avni's message on this, because I admit this is how I've been feeling lately as well. At the beginning of the pandemic, I dove deep into doing everything I could to help the community. I hosted regular innovators meetups and created free worksheets, webinars, and tools, just like every other community builder was doing to help people navigate the pandemic and the changes we were all facing. A year later, though, I was burned out. I needed time inward for reflecting and to recharge. How can we permit innovators to grow without needing to build the place to connect or host events? Avni's last point is especially key. When we take a pause or step back, that does not mean the community stopped. It means you are also creating space for others to step in and lead. The key throughout all of this, as Darren said earlier, is that you are doing this with care for the people you are serving. And as Brian and Maggie said, listening to what your members really want and need. If community leaders lose themselves in the process of giving and supporting others, then they will not be able to serve their communities well either. So as you listen and support others, take the time to be you and yourself. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And yes, you don't need a title to be a community leader. We all are making an impact, small or big, all the time. Thank you for doing so with care and thoughtfulness. So what came up for you today? At a time when the world is changing fast, community builders and leaders are needed everywhere. While troubles and challenges continue to show up at our door, from the continuing pandemic to the fall of Kabul to the earthquakes in Haiti, it's thanks to these individuals, both visible and behind the scenes, that we have caring communities. This episode is a thank you to you and to all those future leaders who continue to stand up for others. Thank you, Brian, Maggie, Darren, and Avni for being a role model for others as well. Please take a moment to learn more about their work and their journey by following them and reading their bio in our show notes. And do share that you found them from Curious Monica Podcast. Next week, we'll be reaching our final episode of Season 1. Thank you so much for all your love and support. I hope you've been enjoying the show so far. We'll be taking a short break in September so that we can come back in October with new stories and research. But please, in the meantime, if you have any episodes or stories you wish we covered or suggestions for people we should interview, please let us know. Send us a hello on Instagram at dear.workplace or Twitter at InnovatorsBox, or good old email at info@innovatorsbox.com. This is your host, Monica Kang, and you've been listening to Curious Monica. Next week, we'll review what lessons we learned in the past few months and wonder what skills and mindset can help you thrive no matter where you work. I'll see you again soon. Have a great day.
Oh, hi. I'm Kelly Gravo, a creative intern at InnovatorsBox, and I hope you're enjoying Curious Monica. Although I'm currently in music school, I'm curious to see where life will take me after graduation. Maybe I'll be an artist manager by day and an international superstar by night. Who knows? This show is brought together by our awesome team: producer Saren O, audio engineers Sam Lemmert and Ravi Lad, myself, Kelly Gravo on marketing, website designer Kriti Pandey, graphic designer Monica Escobar, and Luke Helder on music. And of course, this show is hosted and directed by the curious woman herself, Monica Kang, founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox. To continue the curiosity and creativity of the workplace, visit us at innovatorsbox.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share. We would love to hear what you're curious about and what mysteries Monica can uncover in our future episodes. See you next week.